Okay, so now we're going to look at a more complicated situation which might happen sort of towards the middle of the game. And again, Villa is on the warpath. Villa has decided he wants to attack Felix Diaz, who has his base here in, he has a control marker here in Chihuahua, and his base down there in Jimenez as badge. So Villa can do that because his base is here on the railroad, and Orozco, his old pal, lets him attack through there to get to it. So when Villa declares this attack, he can invite other people to help him once he's established that he's attacking and pays the action. He can ask other people if they want to help him. You can only usefully use two helpers, and their support has to be within 3 of yours. Well, at least 3 less than yours. That's strictly correct, but a bit awkward. Yours can't be 4 higher than theirs or higher, because they won't be strong enough to help you if that's the case, essentially. So in this case, anyway, Villa is attacking Chihuahua. He asks Orozco to help him, and Orozco, since he's already sort of partly involved in the fight, will say yes and join in. He also has to pay for the action, so he'd have to pay $10 per fatigue he has on his base, which is showing 0 at the moment. Candido Aguilar over here could also help defend Chihuahua because he can operate there. Sorry, attack Chihuahua. Diaz, but he decides not to, should we say. Diaz then has the option of defending it himself, or he can invite anyone else to come and defend it in his place. So he might ask Candido Aguilar, who's got, much higher support than him, just 6 support, to come and defend it in his place, and you can do that for free, or you can do a deal. As a defender, every player that chooses to defend must incur the fatigue cost, but they don't pay any monetary cost to do that. Same as a normal defender. And again, you can only add 2 extra people helpfully in the combat, and they all have to take the fatigue penalty, or whatever, incur the fatigue. So in this case, say Aguilar is bribed by Diaz to come and defend him because he's got high support, and Diaz joins in himself, although he doesn't need to. You don't need to help defend yourself, you can let other people do it. As the attacker, Villa leads the attack, although he's gone up to 4 support, and Orozco joins in as well. When you have multiple players on a side, only one of the players called a commander actually plays cards and commits their full support to the battle. With the attackers, the person who's taking the action has to be the commander, and everyone else can be his subordinate. With a defender, any player can be the commander, and up to 2 other players can be their subordinate. Obviously, you can work around the attacker restriction by just waiting until somebody else has a turn and doing it then, but it stops one person being used over and over again to attack repeatedly. So anyway, here we have Aguilar and Diaz defending against Orozco and Villa. Now, the benefit of having multiple people on the side isn't very huge. You get to add, when you draw basic cards at the beginning of the battle, you draw 1 extra for each of your subordinates, so a maximum of 2 extra cards, up to 4 basic cards, and you add 1 to your support in the battle for each subordinate. Again, they've got to have support no more than 3 less than yours to add it. It can be higher than yours like this, but in general, of course, you generally want the person with the highest support being the commander, because that's better, obviously. Although it can be worse if you're massively winning anyway, because it costs more to replace. So over here, Aguilar and Diaz would draw 3 basic cards, so let's give them 3 basic cards. And because there's 2 normally, plus 1 for their subordinate, and how do I handle like this? Say, there's a whole load of double skirmishings which shouldn't be there. Oh no, terrible defence, irresolute defence. And Villa and Orozco would also draw a hand of 3 cards. 1, 2, 3. Now say this bunch, Diaz, they decide to play this card, and Villa plays his cunning plan, because he feels lucky, which is free. No 0 value, but trumps a lot of cards. So this is effectively a high variance card in the basic deck. There are a whole range of values and trumping abilities so that you're never quite sure that you can win in combat despite your odds. So in this situation, these guys have played their card. They have, and they play this. The first thing you do is compare trumps, and this card trumps this card, so these win. Then you compare the strength to see how many casualties you take. Their strength is 4 because V is the commander, plus 1 for his subordinate, plus 0 for his plan, so 5. And their support is 6 for the commander, plus 1 for support, so 7, plus the card, which is plus 5 as defender, 7 plus 5 is 12. So their support is 5, theirs is 12, but because they had a cunning plan, they won the combat. In this case, both of these players take hits to their support, because the attacker didn't win by at least 6, in fact he lost by a considerable number, but again his cunning plan didn't good. And that looks like it might be the end of the battle. However, defenders have an option called Desperate Defence, where if they lose at the first round of a combat, they can pay for an action to fight another round immediately. This is to stop things changing hands repeatedly, and to just condense battles into slightly more dramatic events. In this case, because they feel that they're advantaged, Aguiar and Diaz agreed to pay to fight another round. If some of them dropped out, then they would drop out and you may have to reassign the commander, but in this case they both agreed to carry on fighting and get rid of that card. Well, technically they get rid of it at the end of the battle, so I'll keep it to one side, and this one to one side. Veer and Orozco, when Desperate Defence happens, they can choose to when these guys are paid for their action, they can choose to just concede the battle and go home, or they can carry on fighting because they're halfway to winning, and they agree to carry on fighting because they're matcher. But that doesn't cost them any more because they've already paid for the attack. But these guys would have to pay $10 per fatigue on their base to do it, and they've already paid a fatigue. So that's kind of like taking an action out of turn, effectively, because you pay the fatigue and the money. Right, so this second round, we play a card. I'm going to play them randomly because I don't know what's going on. For a second round of combat in a Desperate Defence, you don't draw any more cards, and you can't reuse the card you've already played. So you keep the hand that you had at the start of the round, less the one you've already played, and we'll trump one of those. So in this round, that's a terrible one. Let's play the other one. That one. This round, Veer and Orozco have played Reinforced Success, which isn't a great card, but it's a flag. Flags are hard to trump, so if you're in a good position like these guys, you might want to play a flag card so you can't get trumped. Whereas in a bad position, you probably want to play a high one, really. Anyway, so they get well, compare the trumps first. This is bad infantry tactics, and it is not trumped or countered by that, and it counts as nothing, so we don't really care what these have got. The uncounterable against the uncountering. Veer has 3 support because he's the leader, even though Orozco is now significantly stronger, and as one for Orozco, that's 3, 4, 5, 6 total. These guys have got 5 for Aguiar, plus 1 for Diaz, so that's 6, plus 4 for the card is 10. So it's 10 against 6. That means that the defenders have won. The first round of combat effectively, is just caused casualties, and the defenders have won the battle at that point. Because the defenders had 10 against 6, they won by 4, so they don't take any casualties or lose any support, but Veer will lose another one for his pains. So that went quite well for Aguiar. The battle will be over and we'd have to deal with our cards, and because the defenders won, then nothing else happens. These guys should go back to their bases and hide, sulk. At the end of battle, I don't think I've covered this before, we have to get rid of all the cards, or we have to deal with all the cards we've got. Basic cards pretty much all say after combat discard, and it says discard whether or not used in the latest printing of them. So you put those back in the basic card deck. Advanced cards largely say if used, pay a munition or discard. So you can, if you've got like two of the same, you might want to just discard it, or you can pay to keep the card, which saves you the action you'd otherwise have to take to draw a new one. But it's a massive sink for munitions, of course. personal cards, like desultory skirmishing, just says retain on it, and most personal cards are either retain if they're an ability that you use repeatedly, like an artillery leader's skill at firing bombardments, or if they're cunning tricks, they will normally say discard when you use them. And something like this has a basic card, so that always says discard on it. Cunning plan. Right, so that's how multiple players on a side work. You do only get a small return on the extra players, but they are also not very much at risk because they don't take casualties. They just pay their money. So that's the next level of complexity, and hopefully that's cleared up pretty much all we have to do with combat. Though I'm sure I'm missing something, and there'll be another one which fills in some of the details in a while. Cheers.